Did you turn the volume up in the Zoom room?
Well, that was Cheetahs.
Yeah,
That's
that's
Cheetahs.
Oh, yeah.
Jared's, myself, got out of here.
Got it. Okay, so let's call this work session to order.
Thank you. All right, first up, item 3.1 is the River District. They are requesting to create a new PD zone, PD 51, and part of that would be Appendix YY, and to amend the zoning map to change from Business Park, which is BP, to PD 51. This is a location, and in the PD zone, they have to be 500 feet from University Parkway, State Street, or 800 North. So that's why this map is showing you that they're over 990 approximately feet from 800 North. That is one of the requirements of the zone. And it shows what it's currently zoned now is a business park, which is BP. This is their concept plan. They want to have 25 units. And most of them are next to the river, 20 of them. Parking, they have plenty of parking in the PD zone. They have to have 2.5 spaces per unit, which is 2 in front of the garage and then an extra one. So they have more than that, more than the required, which is, they say 65 is required. Actually, it's 63 is required. We did the math. So they still are over the requirement. This is the existing plat showing that it's on one lot. And they are going to split that into 2 lots. And they're only rezoning to PD 51, the section that's outlined in red, and that's where those 25 units are. The other, this is kind of sideways. North is to my right. The other part of the lot will still remain BP, which is Business Park. This shows the existing zoning. Traffic circulation, it shows that it'll be a private road through the units. And then the public road will wind through Provo. This is on the border of Provo, so makes it a little bit more interesting. These are the elevations. And these are more, and in the staff report, I put that it was going to be 35 feet, 7 inches. I think that was wrong. There's an additional 14 inches on top of that. So the actual maximum height is 36 feet, 9 inches, which is still well below the 40 feet that is required, or maximum, I'm sorry. This is the proposed text outlining what will regulate the PD 51 zone. And this is what it looks like now from 8th North and 1550 East and University Parkway, University Avenue. And we recommend a positive recommendation to the City Council. Do you have any questions on this one before I move forward?
Can we talk about that stoplight?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I sent
That's
that
okay.
email this morning.
Well, I
forgot
sent
to
it
put
so
Sam
late.
on it.
Oh.
So I had expected Sam to respond to you, so I'm sitting there, Sam, did you respond? He's like, I didn't get it, and I just looked, so Sam's gonna read it right
so
now.
late, send it to me right now.
Well, he's looking that up. Can I ask some other questions?
Yeah.
What is ingress gonna be? Is it gonna be up past the office building and there is a road that goes out to University just north of it? Or is that a?
Really?
Is that east
So this is
road?
development in Provo.
Hmm.
And they're building this as part of that development. This will connect, so they'll have an access here into Provo and access out on 1550. They'll have this access here, and then they'll have a private street and they'll actually have access to University Avenue.
I couldn't hear you. The one that goes to,
So that's gonna be private for now, going to University Avenue.
okay,
That's still gonna be open. They're gonna replace half the bridge as part of the project. Because half of it is new, half of it's really old, and they take out half, replace that half. That's not part of the project, they're just doing it on their own. As far as an access, this will be a full access here for now until we done. This does whatever with that intersection. And the main access will be out here to Provo.
On University.
Ultimately Center Street, then go to 1550 through the office.
so when most people choose to go to 800 North or take an alternate route of travel,
Well, that joins in 800 North is the concern.
They have University Avenue as an option or going through Provo to Center Street.
Yeah, so people, I mean, if there's other alternatives. If 8 North is their only alternative, then I guess they would choose that, but typically if you're gonna go westbound, you'd probably go that way, up west on Center Street, I would guess, or up to 1550 where the light is, come back around that way.
So you don't see that would pose a traffic issue then on 800 North yourself.
Because there's 3 other alternatives to get out, or 2 other alternatives to
Right.
get out. So that's not the only one we're focusing on.
But can we ask for a traffic study? Can we ask UDOT to do a traffic study?
So a little bit of background too, the reason why we're supportive of this as well is that we've coordinated with Provo to get this public connection down here into Provo. It was, from my standpoint, this is really one big long cul-de-sac. The longest that we can go with residential is 650 feet, so we needed to have 2 access points. So this project here, where it says future development, it's on the same track in Provo right now. They're trying to get this rezoned and they want to do this, so this is going to be a roadway. It's going to look and feel like a road. It's going to be private, and there's going to be a public access through there. Understanding that as well, there's also some constraints from a utility standpoint in this area as well. They've addressed those into the site plan. But their main access isn't necessarily gonna be 8 North. If they're gonna wanna go west, I mean, they're allowed to go there and wait. It's not likely gonna be a very, depending on the time of day, there might be gaps and then they might be able to make that movement. But likely they're gonna have to go south into Provo to access to go west. Now, there is a bridge here, and Jason did make the point, there's actually two bridges there. There's an old version and a newer version. They have a study saying that one half of it's up to code and the other half isn't. If this likely is gonna turn into a public street and it's gonna be Orem's, we're gonna have to have our own independent consultant come in and evaluate that, because really you don't have one bridge that meets code and one side that doesn't, so we would likely have to do something there. So as far as a signal goes there, to your point, Tina, I'm not aware of a bond that was put in place. In our conversations with UDOT, it's not that they're opposed to a signal, it's just that there's a few steps. One, Orem needs to identify that there needs to be some sort of intersection improvement there. A signalized intersection could be installed there. There would just have to be some other physical infrastructure that needs to put in, similar to what you see if you're going north out of Heber and you have there's that turnoff there for Camas where they have those lights flashing. Because there's a vertical curve and a horizontal curve, speeds, if you're heading eastbound, can be anywhere around 50 miles an hour. There's really not enough sight distance.
Right.
So in order to make that work, they would have to add some other items there. The current Region 3 director is a big fan of having safety of that intersection be based upon those signalized lights working, flashing. So if you have people coming around, happens to be bad weather, you don't have that stopping sight distance. So I think there's an understanding that something needs to happen. But if they don't feel comfortable enough that it's safe enough to have a signal there, likely it would probably be a median that would allow maybe lefts in but not lefts out. So I don't know exactly. I'll have to look at this if they paid a $70,000 bond. Typically, I don't know who they would have paid that to or how that would have
I
worked.
think it was UDOT.
Yeah, so I could find out if that was paid, and usually if it isn't, if Aerostar built it and it wasn't ever built, I would assume that they would have refunded them that money, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know that either. I
Yeah.
think that Aerostar actually went bankrupt at some point, so I don't know what happened with Bond.
Yeah, there's some other items that have happened too in this area. You guys probably aren't aware of, but Central Utah Water Conservancy District is looking to realign their Alpine Aqueduct. It's gonna be a 10-foot diameter pipe. Right now it feeds the north part, or feeds Salt Lake Valley, and it feeds a lot of water to Utah County as well. But it's gonna end up going through the Cove Estates area. And with the 10-foot diameter pipe being constructed and installed in a 32-foot right-of-way road, there's not gonna be a lot of great access through there. So there might be something where with that project, there has to be a signal here at this intersection for some of those folks to get in and out of that area as well. So to say that there won't be an signalized intersection here, I think that there might be. It might be sooner than later, but because UDOT was hesitant with where they are currently now, for us, the best option was to continue or to connect this road to the south into Provo. And it was a battle for us to do that. It was, they initially had this future development and they said, oh yeah, you guys are gonna have a connection, but it was winding around through. And it's like, that's not what we want. It's gotta look like a road. It's gotta kind of smell like a road. If you want it to be private, that's fine. But for the traveling public who are here, and the thought was they wanna have an Airbnb area here and some restaurants, people should be able to think that, hey, this is naturally where I need to go. So we went back and forth and they finally came up with this concept where that red dotted line is. So it'll be a 32-foot wide, I think, public road with parking on the side. So for all intents and purposes, it's gonna look like a road. It's not gonna look like a little connection road through a condominium development.
So Ryan, maybe you can explain just for reference, I don't know if we've explained what that development provo is gonna look like, just to the west of the proposed
How many
rezone.
You know, I mean, you said you talked to Provo, right?
Yeah.
I just got a phone from some council members in Provo City and they have no idea about the project. Nothing's been presented.
The
nothing's
council
been-
may
Hasn't
not,
gone to
it's
council.
probably going to their planning commission, just like it is here.
Okay,
So it
because
hasn't-
they're highly against it, all of them, the ones I talked to. So we need to be very coordinated as far as what's going on, because you said that you had hard time, it was a fight to get the road through. And the decision we make today could affect the way they work and the way they think. And so I need more coordination with Provo than just there may be a light, there may not be a light, we need to study.
Actually,
we
been
study.
coordinating with Provo for 6 months on this to get this road designed, so Provo staff is.
So from a staff level,
Provo
this
staff.
is what we agreed to. Now, whatever their political powers would be, I haven't been interfacing with them, but when we first started this, the developer saying, oh, Provo's on board, we don't need to have this public road through there. And then I talked to both Gordon and to Rob, they're like, well, no, of course we wanna have a road connect through, so
But
that's
that's
why.
my point, is the developer says whatever he wants to get what
Right.
they need. And
Well,
that's the
one
case in
option-
point right there, we just need to make sure it's done right.
Yeah, one option that you guys can do is maybe continue, I mean, that's an option until Provo approves theirs. That's, you're not forced or obligated to approve it.
And
And if you wanna wait, then you can say, we wanna continue this, or come back after you got Provo's approved. That's another option. So we're not saying you have to approve it tonight. If you wanna wait for Provo, which makes total sense.
Well, I think especially with the largest size of the project is sitting at Provo, we're only getting 25 units and they're getting how many, a few hundred?
Yeah, because this one doesn't really function
Couple
well
hundred
without Provo approving it. I mean, it makes sense.
Also, Provo is working on a new Airbnb regulations. That's just not gonna go, so this whole project may face some challenges, specifically when they say they want a big portion of that to be Airbnb.
Well, no, I
Not
think
again,
this is the portion in Orem that they're looking for Airbnb. I don't know what this is. I mean, the way it's been communicated to us, it's an incubator and they want to build some other commercial and office space down further south. And this is where they'd house those folks.
I think the largest issue Provo's having with it is they're over 70% rentals, and none of this will be sold, all of it will be rentals, short term and long term.
Yeah,
And that's the biggest issue Provo's having with it, and that's why they may not even do it. So,
That's similar to what they're proposing.
we're very aware. So
so you guys.
do we have to change it from a business park? That's number one. I'm being on the record,
Okay.
I'm being facetious on the record, okay, I have to hear from you guys, because I don't.
No, that's what the planning commission is, to make a recommendation.
Okay, also not to deviate from this, but I'm sure the second item on the agenda is related to business park fast food, so it can go into the remaining business park section. Provo will have a huge wait and they're not gonna see it for a few months, so I think when we meet, we have a lot more questions than we can handle in one sitting a day, so we'd love to ask all the questions, go through it, and I'll see what the planning commission
commission wants to do it. I myself would like to continue this.
And the applicant will be here too, you can ask them questions, I don't know, that'll help.
And I think this is such a sensitive project to a lot of neighbors, being that kind of high density, right? Where they didn't think they'll have any high density in Bean Business Park. Well, I'm getting a lot of push in my neighborhood because that's not far from me.
And we sent out like 1,500 notices within 1,500 feet, we got one comment, the one that I sent to you.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm with you.
Is there
Only six
fewer
people,
than 10?
and only 6 people showed up, and then you can only imagine how many called me and texted me, because they're all on vacations. That's the neighborhood of vacations. Everybody's on vacation one time. So that's when they get to it, they get to it. So that's where, and we need to balance it, because the project owner is also a neighbor. Fine, so, yeah, so I may actually completely take myself out of it, based on what we find out. That's why I think asking a lot of questions is important. And see what benefits everything, how it works. But right now, the way the roads is designed and the way Pro was thinking about it, and not having a traffic signal, and to make matters a little bit more emotional, is one of my neighbor is suffering with lifelong disability because of a wreck on that intersection. She got T-boned, Madeline Jones.
I've seen accidents like that.
Madeline Jones, she's permanently disabled on a wheelchair from being an incredible young woman with a bright future because of the ill planning of the intersection. And we've seen plenty of accidents, and this was the most close to home. So all in the neighborhood looking at Madeline and says, we don't want that after what happened to Madeline. So it's pretty sensitive to all sides, but you have a lot more questions, please do.
I had a few more questions, more about how much land they own. Is there land on the other side of the river that they own? Can they expand this further into
They don't.
Orem?
They don't.
I'm
own
just
that.
asking.
Another.
So is this, that was one of my other questions, is this trying to zone it before they buy it?
So they own this.
They do own that chunk, okay.
They don't own the cross road.
Okay.
That's a different individual that owns that. So they're gonna develop this, they own this as well, and they're gonna develop this, so they own both pieces in all.
But somebody across the river, I think they're interested in developing their property as well.
Yes.
So I think that was kind of the question, wasn't it? Do you know what they want to do, Jason, or have you had any discussions?
No,
about
we've
it?
talked to them multiple times and they changed their,
They've changed their mind.
Okay.
so we're not sure at this point. But they'd have to go through the same process.
Do we have as a city, have any plans to discuss what really we want to have happen at the mouth of the canyon? Because I know that came out of the
That's-
economic,
Yeah, that was my
Development plan?
question, wasn't this kind of designated or earmarked, or at least thought about, maybe conceptualized as a tourist zone? So,
we have to.
this is where I was thinking, when we talked about an economic development plan, looking at investigating a tourist zone. This to me kind of felt like where it was going to be, so
Right now, it's business park.
I understand it's a business
Has
park
been
now.
for years.
But, are we getting the cart before the horse? Well, while this might be something good, is there something much better if we get this tourist zone done and wait? I guess I don't see any harm in waiting.
Well, there was a hotel convention center plan there originally, and that didn't happen.
Okay.
This is being treated as a tourist development by the business owner, by the landowner. This proposal is to put in an Airbnb enclave, so similar to a hotel. There'll be individual units that are rented with a central office, so you have on-site management. And then his goal is to have destination restaurants. I'll let you guys decide if fast food fits in with destination restaurants. But that's the message that's been shared with us, so they can take advantage of the canyon and the clientele of the owner of this property would be utilizing these units when they come to town.
As far as the city, there's nothing in the horizon for us about short-term rentals. Because we're trying to have as many available homes as possible for people to live with a lower rent cost. And all the short-term rental just take the inventory, it dries up. And I've had a friend of mine in Orem has 35 of them, Airbnb,
There's nothing currently.
And by the way, he does enjoy the 45% discount on private tax and investment property because there's nothing regulates that. So that's where Provo is going, because that's a huge discount for owner occupied than investor.
That's a whole discussion for a different day on a different topic.
I'm with you. It all ties up because this project will open the door for Provo to do all the way they need an Airbnb. We will need to make a decision. Are we going to move Airbnb people from Provo to Orem? Are we going to have a lot more short-term rentals in Orem, or we really want to accommodate the lower income housing that we're trying to reach, that we're trying to give them more homes to buy, kind of can't get them homes by the all short-term rentals. So that's,
So we kind of need to move along because we're trying to give Grant some time to talk about housing. So did you have any other questions on that one?
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I really appreciate you trying to take control of this.
No.
I really do, but I would like to
Sorry.
next time to just point out that we're short on time. And
Oh, I
instead of
did
moving
at the
on,
beginning.
yeah, but that's,
I did point that out at the beginning.
All right,
That's okay.
let's just move on.
So Murray,
Okay, so-
This, my only other question is, I used to work
We
down
just
that
go
business,
next
I used to
item.
work down in the Provo area there.
There's friction between you two and I don't wanna have in this meeting.
no, there shouldn't be friction, the friction, I did not start the
We'll
friction.
just move on.
But shouldn't the chair be in charge of moving
No,
on?
I'm sorry about this, if
No,
I'm in
you're-
charge, I'm in
you're in
charge.
charge of the meeting.
I don't want anybody to tell
So
me, move along.
No, I just.
I appreciate and I
wanted
love
the
the chair.
tension between you two.
There's no tension, I just,
Let's run
I'm
the
trying
meeting,
to, I'm
okay?
trying to
We've
point
had
out,
some disagreements in the past.
that's
Let's
okay
just
to have
not-
disagreements are allowed. And no public employee can avoid disagreements, period. So this is very simple, I really appreciate you, Cheryl, I'm not mad or upset with you, you're great. But we have questions that we need to ask, and we will take what we need in time, and if we need to push his item to next week or next session, we will.
We can do it next session.
Okay, I just want respect in this room from everyone, that's all I'm
Where
asking.
where was the disrespect?
I'm not directing my comments at you, Hazel, I'm not directing them at Cheryl. I'm just asking, can we not have the tension, can we just move on?
There was no
That's all I'm
tension.
saying. Or can we finish this item? All I'm saying is, let's just
Is everybody
not
satisfied?
get into a disagreement here, let's just keep moving.
I'm sorry, one of the planning commission members is not satisfied and he has a question.
Perfect.
Please go ahead.
So I used to work down in the business park down there, and I think if this development goes through, you're gonna start, I know. I don't know if people are gonna turn left on 800, but that will be a better, I assume that it will go from Orem into there, it will increase more traffic, it will go on Center Street and University, that would be a nice section,
Depends on the time of day, you will get some traffic using 8th, right? A
right?
lot more traffic will come into the project on 8th, most likely, coming south.
Right, yeah, the traffic, I know there's not gonna be traffic going north, but there could be lots of traffic.
Coming through, yeah, to their access. That'll open up access into that park, I'm sure.
Is everybody satisfied?
Well, I was gonna say, it seems to me that any traffic that's headed out on 800 north, if they were to take a chance to go west,
Thanks.
with that bend in the road, as best I
It's
can
scary.
remember, it would be a cause for concern.
No, you wouldn't.
Take it, yeah.
The other day, I was coming out of Will's pit stop, I believe, I was rendezvousing with someone, and to get in and out of there, I thought I would never make it. Actually, my grandson was driving.
Just need to go to the Will's pit stop down at the university.
Well, that's what we should have done, I suppose. We met and to come out of there and to go south to head up the canyon. We waited and just when we think it's clear, then someone whips out of the canyon and just lickety split. But that, seeing that that's in that proximity is,
Definitely, it depends on the time of day, right? 8
Yeah.
in the morning and 5 at night is gonna be.
well, if it's me, I'm usually in a hurry, and if I'm headed west, I'm the best way out, I'm gonna take my chance probably, and I think that's,
Understood, so there's
that's
issues.
that I would have, yeah.
So it sounds like we may, it's up to the planning commission, obviously, but there might be some questions unanswered that we just wanna wait to see what Provo does, and that's an option as well.
Thanks, Jason. There's no other question.
I have a basic question, and that is, are we trying to encourage businesses in Orem, or are we trying to encourage houses? Are we trying to encourage getting to businesses here so that people that live here can work here instead of 30,000 of them having to leave town every day? There's only so much land. And this, for years, as far as I know, has been designated business park. I think I remember 20-some years ago, they were going to build a hotel down there.
That was a few years ago.
Why did that not happen?
I think it was about 25 years ago, just we never panned out, never panned out.
Killed it.
If there's no other question, thanks, Cheryl. Go to the next item.
So item 3.2 is in the business park area. They want to be able to allow fast food, which right now in that zone, fast food is not allowed, so that's what this would do.
Your screens.
That's what? Oh. Yeah, that's right. So you can see for fast food at the very end where the business park is, it would be permitted instead of not permitted.
What was the prohibition before? What was the reasoning for not having fast food at a business park?
I don't know.
It's more of just a destination type, if they're gonna have restaurants, it's more of a park, right, where you have go in, drive in, sit down, you don't do the fast food type stuff.
Fast food increases traffic, but destinations.
Times change, right, it's been vacant for 30 years, so that's kind of the evolution of, hey, let's try something.
And where else in the city would this affect in terms of, would it,
We have no other business park other than the university
then just right?
is on BP as well.
Okay.
UVU, you mean?
UVU, sorry. So those are the two locations, so it wouldn't affect, it would basically affect this area, right?
Right, okay.
Because
I
UVU
just-
can do pretty much what they want as a state entity,
Yeah.
right? So it would affect this particular.
As far as the elevation of the theme, can you go back to, as far as individual projects, back to the project. When it was originally designed, the developer owned both sides of the river. So the way the ordinance was written is the west side had to be designed a certain way, and the east side had to be designed a certain way, and they all had to fit together. But now we've got different ownerships, we have an office here, and then we've got, now this is under different ownership, and so what they're proposing is to say that this development, or whatever is developed here, would have to match each other, so you couldn't have a hodgepodge here. But right now, the way it's worded, it would have to match this building, which you can't have residential. If that was approved, you don't wanna have a glass office building as a residential unit, as a two-story. So they're basically stating, now we go back to the text, stating that the architecture of the whatever project, so consistent throughout each individual project. So whatever the project is, has to be consistent with the design, materials, things like that. So that's what that proposal is doing. It's just, it has to be consistent with each other and not all have to match the same materials. That's what
I was just curious what the background is, because it seemed interesting that it said no drive-throughs and, so thank you.
And it was, yeah, the BP was probably designed probably 30 years ago or so, when that convention center and the two office buildings, there was gonna be a mirror office building as well. That is never built because it just, the economy or whatever, it just wasn't penciling, so they built one, and it's sat vacant for now 20 plus years, so that's kind of the story. It was originally designed for that intent, and now it's just, you know, they're wanting to modify it because it hasn't developed into that.
That office building is still vacant, is it?
No, it's full, but they're not. The original design was to mirror that, and then across the street have a similar design with a convention center hotel type thing. That was 25 plus years ago, so. And multiple owner since, so.
Is this recommendation connected with the other one? I mean, if we continue the other, like.
Yeah, I think they would be, yeah, so we consider them together.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, you don't have to, but I mean, it really is contingent on the project.
So is this the same group that's doing the other?
Yep, yep.
Any other questions? Yep, next time.
Okay, 3.3, this is Kelly Subdivision Plat B. Well, remember a month or two ago, they came through for a rezone from R8 to R6. So now they're coming back through with their plat amendment. This shows where it is, shows the R6 in the middle of the R8 zone that was done recently. This is what they are suggesting for two homes. One will be a flag lot. And this is the proposed plat. The flag of the lot, if that makes sense, will be part of lot 1. So even though lot 2 will have access, lot 1 will have to maintain. And this is what it looks like now. And we recommend approval. Do you have any questions on this one?
There we go, next one.
Okay. Cherry Oaks, Plat B. They're vacating lots 5 and 8 of Cherry Oaks Plat A and wanting to get approval for Cherry Oaks Plat B. This is what it currently looks like now. The large lot on the south is going to be split into 2 lots, but they're all the same owner. This is a preliminary plat showing the existing buildings, and they will all be removed. This is what the existing plat looks like. This is the proposed plat with 2 lots moved into 3 lots now. This is what it looks like now, and all those buildings will be removed. So they're basically, they don't want to rezone, they don't want anything, they just want to subdivide 2 lots into 3. So,
Are they removing the big building too on the,
On
is
lot
the
one.
big one, the more modern building or?
oh, are you talking about the house in the back?
That's to say, lot 1 staying, but the lot 1, 2, and 3 are going, right?
Right,
And why is lot 1 included? Is it just
same owner.
just because it's the same owner? There's no property line adjustment to lot 1?
I was talking about the building on the top lot there.
Yeah, that house is staying.
That
one
house
will
is
stay.
staying.
But the lots, the house, all the buildings on the lot that's getting subdivided will be removed.
Like they are adjusting the law.
And my guess is there's
They are not.
Yeah,
Okay, because that's what I thought, it would only be included if there's a lot line adjustment.
correct.
So that's what it looks like now.
So they're
So
tweaking
straightening it up.
Any other questions? All right, last but not least, sign zone E. Center Point Church is located here between Sandhill Road and I-15. They would like to get a digital sign so they can make announcements instead of using a banner on their building. They can have a sign that will say, you know, the Christmas program is whenever, or the Easter program, whatever they want to advertise. So sign zone E doesn't make it all the way down to their property. Where their property is, there's a property north of them. And the north boundary of that property is where sign zone E ends. So this is their property. This is where sign zone E is now. So you can see it's just 1 lot above.
So the Stephen Henniger College, farm off Stevenson here, that's not good.
So they'll extend it, not for the whole property, just a little bit past their building. So sign zone Z will be part of their building and a little bit further south, but not the whole lot. So this is where they want to put the sign. So that's why they want to have it a little bit south of their building. This is what it looks like now from I-15 and Sandhill Road. I guess I don't. There was one in your packet.
Shows the sign, but they're not tied to whatever they're showing here, right? It's whatever the sign zone would allow. So they could do a 25-foot above the top of the deck of that freeway, 25 feet, whatever other signs are allowed, north or the similar zone. So they're just wanting that same privilege on their building. So they're showing a smaller sign. Doesn't mean they would build that, but they would be allowed 1 sign that faces I-15.
And sign zone E does allow digital signs, electronic signs.
And the reason we only did a portion of the property to include their building was so they wouldn't have them put it clear down to the south. So they want to keep that signs on north, so that if they did have a sign, it would be on the north portion, which would be consistent northbound with retail and other signs along with.
Any questions on that?
I don't know enough about digital signs.
But it could be the size of pretty much any other billboard.
No.
Some of them are 4.5.
So what's the difference, what would be the difference between the size of the sign versus the
It's
building?
gonna be based on the frontage. There's a maximum size of the case they can have. I can't remember what the size is, 250 square feet or something like that. And then it's a maximum height of 25 feet above the deck,
Or 25 feet above.
above the actual deck of the I-15.
Okay.
So if they're in a pit, for example, and they can't visibly get above, then we allow them to go 25 feet above that, the surface of the road. So if they're down here, they can build high enough to get 25 foot visible above the freeway. So that there's that built in, and then there's the size, but it basically only allows advertisement on their site. So they wouldn't be able to advertise anything off-site, off-premise. The billboards are 620 square feet. We're talking it's 12 feet, a third or a quarter of that size maximum.
What would be reasons that you wouldn't want that done?
I don't know, that would be.
Yeah.
Well, there are.
From our
I think
perspective.
would that, would they have to pay an increment in property taxes or anything like that? Will that increase the value of the property?
I don't know that it would, because it's just, it'd be a small enough sign. I don't know that it may have valued, I don't think they count that into their valuation as a commercial. No, they may personally, but I don't know the county would count it.
Well, because we
Why was there a boundary on the south previously, as to how far sites could be placed?
So the zone itself has increased over time. Stevens Henniger was built probably in the early 2000s or so.
And that was a season setting.
And they were okay with just the wall sign. They didn't need a sign, so we didn't take that down. When the church was built,
Yeah.
they didn't think they needed a sign either, so just the uses themselves. Now the church has been going for about 5 or so years. Now they're realizing, okay, we want to be able to advertise to our parishioners, to say, this is coming up or whatever, so it's more feasible for them than instead of changing the banner off the wall. I don't know if you've seen that, they change it periodically, and it's just a pain. This would be a lot more simple for them to do that and advertise what activities they have in the church. Yeah. Any questions on that?
Not yet.
They were following.
Yeah, sure. We have 20 minutes. 20 minutes enough for you for the presentation?
If it isn't, could we maybe use some time after?
Sure.
Is that okay?
And we have our training tomorrow for 2 days at Thanksgiving point, right?
Right. So we really just want to introduce this item. If for whatever reason we're out of time here, definitely retain 10, 15, 20 minutes afterwards.
If you guys want to grab some to eat.
And it's needed to discuss for some
That is the offer.
But I've stayed here today, so. Well, no, but wait, it'll be my wife's.
Well, that's exactly what I think. And even this, well, even this development is 3-1, that's kind of. It's just another. This is just what we don't take some proactive steps.
Oh, all sorts of stuff, yeah.
What are we gonna do?
She wakes up at third night, if that's a possible thing, yes.
Figure out what these orange wheel is. No, find the stage street. Yeah, what?
This is diesel. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't think she was.
This is an exception, so much better. Years and years. What kind of,
I think my wife was surprised at my for me,
I think right now we take it until Orem, until the city of. I mean, and I think that's a great, because that was my big question, where is it at?
That's saying, oh, Orem's gonna approve it, they say that, right?
They are, of course they are.
Because they're just getting snapped up. Yeah. As soon as they get it.
We don't want
We'll give it a second. Give it a second. Go bang on the door.
Maybe, yeah, I mean, it's the only thing but so much is important, but having it in place before people come, you know?
they, there's been
This
some,
practice literally.
there's usually chairs in our office, so I'm not sure
You don't mean in terms of office places.
Ready?
That should.
Okay, ready?
Tell him, that's my boss, tell him I should have.
Great. I'm here today to introduce a general plan amendment that we're making to meet a new state law requirement that was put in effective June 1st of this year from this recent legislative session regarding moderate income housing strategies. This isn't a completely new requirement. In 2019's legislative session, Senate Bill 34 was passed that required cities to take additional steps in planning for moderate income housing, including in their general plans and reporting those strategies to the state. So they modified this year. We'll go through in a few minutes. One of the key elements of that first law in 2019 was it required cities of a certain size, if we met those certain requirements, to adopt these strategies. So, first I kind of go through, clarify what that specified municipality, which is what the current language has in the current law, and what began in 2019. Orem is classified as what we call a second-class city by state code. And it's because we have a population of 65,000 people up to 100,000 people. And so because we're a second-class city, we're required to adopt these measures for moderate income housing. The other element I thought was important for us to clarify, as defined in state code, is moderate income housing, as this is included in these two laws, the 2019 version and the recent legislative session version. Moderate income housing, and this is straight from the code. We'll send you these slides after. You see these green links. That is an actual direct link to state code. So if you want to, have some light reading for the evening, you can read through that. It's really, really riveting. So moderate income housing means housing occupied or reserved for occupancy by households with a gross household income equal to or less than 80% of the median gross income for households of the same size in the county in which the city is located. So median household income in Utah County from the Census Bureau, and that's linked there as well, of 2020, that's the most recent number from the census, is $77,057. And so the 80% or less would be 61,000, and that's median income, or 80% of the median income. So that's kind of the numbers we're dealing with when we talk about these requirements that they're focusing on for moderate income housing. So this year, some changes were added to this. HB 462 was the law this year, House Bill 462, and it added a general plan requirement for the cities to adopt these strategies. So this is from that 10-9A-401. The general plan is defined in this section shall include moderate housing element that meets requirements of these subsections. We'll go through that in a minute. On or before October 1st, a specified municipality, like we've reviewed already, with a general plan that does not comply with this section shall amend the general plan to comply. So that's what we're going through right now. So we're trying to come into compliance with this new law that has been passed. A lot of text up here.
What's the penalty if we don't comply?
We'll get there in a second. I don't know if we'll get there today, but
This after.
we'll get there eventually. There's a lot of state text up here, and but I want to include it in these slides so you have it. But these are some of the nitty-gritties about specific requirements from the law this year that were changed or added to. The basics is that we have to pick a minimum of 4 strategies from a menu of options, and we've got a handout that we'll give you as well to review for continued discussion. But this is the code that kind of outlines the specifics of that.
And then I think this is other important thing is this is the laws, the city shall consider determination that municipalities shall facilitate a reasonable opportunity for a variety of housing, including moderate income housing, to meet the needs of people of various income levels living or working or desiring to live and work in the community, and to allow people with various incomes to benefit from and fully participate in all aspects of neighborhood and community life. There's the 4 menu options that we have to adopt, and then amend our general plan to formally adopt them as part of the general plan. In addition to the general plan requirement, we have to report on the status of moderate income housing in our community to the state. So that is a new requirement this year as well, of what the reporting requirements are, additional reporting requirements. In 2019, the original law that was passed, we had 4 requirements that we were required to adopt. And we've already been reporting on those for the last 3 years.
Were they adopted? I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay, just for clarification.
Yes, they were adopted, and actually, as staff, and we had, discussions with council, we had some housing charrettes in 2019. As we've had discussions and these engagement opportunities, we've taken some of those ideas from residents, from professionals, and we've added to the minimum 4 strategies. So last year when we reported this, before they changed this law, we had 7 strategies. Now, they changed this year the substance of those strategies, and some of the ones we had chosen before don't qualify. But this basically is the specifics of the reporting that we're going to be required to do before October 1st as well. And it's 3 slides of text. So it just kind of outlines specific demographic reporting, market data, building permits issued, housing counts, unit counts, etc. So it's kind of outlining specifics to what the report constitutes. Any questions so far? It's a lot of information. I think I don't want to get too. We're 9 slides in. There's 28 slides. So the other major element of this year's law was station area plans. So it's a requirement for cities to have a fixed guideway public transit station, which under this law's text is the front runner station, as well as the BRT stations. And so we're required to develop and adopt stationary plan, and then adopt any land use regulations to implement that stationary plan. The big thing is we don't have to do that by October 1st, because we'd be in a big lurch right now. But 2025 is the deadline for us to adopt all of the stationary plans. So kind of to review highlights of this year's legislation that we're trying to come into compliance with. It clarified the requirement and timing. The report used to be due November 1st, now it's due October 1st. That was so that they've told us so that they can review them more thoroughly in preparation for the legislative session in January. Requires the inclusion of an implementation plan. So before we could pick strategies and kind of say, hey, this is what we might do towards adopting and changing or improving moderate housing in the community. Now they're actually requiring us to provide detailed implementation plan with dates and intention and steps. It amended the strategies, some of them drastically, some of them were added, additional options were added. Outlines, like I showed you, the specifics, added some more details to the report that we were required to submit. And then it did add, to Murray's question, they added some priority incentives or restrictions for compliance. So move into incentives. So if a community adopts a minimum of 6 strategies we qualify for priority consideration, what that means is we have priority consideration for transportation monies for projects in our community. The Governor's Office of Planning and Budget may also give priority for financial grants to this community under this COVID-19 Local Assistance Matching Grant Program. And so again, just to review, A minimum of 3 strategies is required plus 1 because we have a front runner station. So we are proposing at this point just to move forward with a minimum of 4 strategies that we're already kind of doing or required to do. Restrictions, if we are non-compliant, there's no report filed or no general plan amendment, or that they find that the general plan does not meet the requirements. Ultimately, the restrictions are UDOT may not program funds from the TIF fund or the TTIF fund, which is the Transportation Investment Fund, to projects in Orem, and then the local assistance matching grants would not be available. Sam has provided this in coordination with our liaison at UDOT. This is some of the projects coming forward that would be funded out of the Transportation Investment Fund that are specific to Orem coming in the horizon. In the horizon, I say that because some of them are far a ways out, but when you deal with a lot of these big major capital projects, that is the funding that you have to plan for, millions and millions of dollars. And then we also showed some of the transit TTIF, they call it, the Transit Transportation Investment Fund project and funding that they're planning. And a lot of those they include in the transit is bike and pedestrian projects, active transportation projects. So a lot of trails, a lot of those type of projects that we have in the works, right? So it's proposed. Again, to review, we're amending the chapter 4 of the housing of the general plan to adopt the minimum of 4 strategies to comply with the state law. And then also in that chapter, this was updated in 2018. So we've gone through a new census. So we're updating the demographics and housing gap analysis that would be part of that report, as well as part of that chapter 4. So these are the 4 recommended strategies. Now, I will just clarify this right up front. The 4th strategy on the list here is codified as B on the list. Develop and adopt a stationary plan. Orem is required to do that. In addition to requiring a stationary plan, we're required to do adopt another strategy relating to front runner stations or BRT stations, which is this Q, creating a housing and transit investment zone. And so we've picked those 2 because we're already required to do them. And so we kind of only have to pick 2 more minimum to meet the 4 minimum this year. And so the additional ones are create 4 and allow 4 accessory apartments, dwelling units. We've already done that. We're already continuing to do that. And so we're proposing that as one of our minimum strategies. The additional one is zone or rezone for higher densities or moderate income residential development in commercial or mixed use zones near transit corridors, commercial centers or employment centers. So that would be specific to the station areas plans that we're going to have to look at and adopt in a longer time span. And so that's specifically the missing middle kind of housing types that we could look at. So we're not saying, hey, we're tall buildings. We're saying, hey, we're looking at what we call transit-oriented development near these transit corridors where that really makes a lot of sense. Additionally, we already have zones that qualify under that as well. So we're listing those zones additionally that have some more vacant land in them that allow higher densities currently.
So a question about that.
Yeah.
If we are going to have this as one of the strategies, zone or rezone higher density with moderate income residential, can we mandate that the developer make it not rentals? Or we have no choice? Like they can go put them in there, but that's not going to give us the moderate income housing.
Legally, we can make them not be rentals, or we can, I don't know, that's a.
Can it be owner occupied, or?
Unfortunately, we can't mandate that because the right to rent your property is considered a constitutional right.
Perfect.
maybe there's some strategies we can do to encourage it.
I know Linden is doing a development partnership with the developers where if they want to get something approved, they're mandated to dedicate a percentage of the project as an owner occupied.
And part of this is our consideration as we move forward with these stationary plans, is to look at maybe a minimum that have to be moderate income housing. So a certain percentage has to be rented below, if they're rented below the 80%, things like that. So we're just barely starting this. It's gonna take a couple of years to do that. But this is the one that we need to get in to get the state basically off our back.
To get off your back, yeah.
That is something that's up to
Well, and the reason I'm asking that question is because of the plethora of short-term rentals, the nightly rental that we have more, that could transfer into moderate income housing for people. That we're just shortening the market heavily with those.
So, Mr. Chairman, can I request that we maybe just continue this?
Say later.
Is that okay?
And we'll continue.
So, just a comment, these are 4 of about 20 choices, right?
24 choices.
And by the way, just so you know, some of us on the city council are not happy with these choices. So we're having a meeting on Monday with staff saying that's not what we would choose.
I see.
Yeah, and
Well, that's the future. Okay, thank you so
And
much.
the planning commission, of course, can look at the 24 options, and decide if there's
Yeah,
a
we'll look to
different
see all
one
of
you
them.
wanna. And I think they've got a list.
So, yeah, we'll give you all that information. So at the end of the presentation, we'll show our timeline.
Well, the good thing about this is the first 2 basically are. And this is really one that I think, and the second 2 are things we can.
It's frustrating, no question, no question. It feels like a power grab.
It's just what the federal government does in here.
No, what they're gonna do is, no, I don't say this back. Discuss this again, this is not a state of practice.
And we're gonna give some of the federal stuff to them.
I've never considered you're not live, by the way. Yeah, I didn't talk about. I was in the car. I was right behind the car.
When you turn it on.
Yeah. I think we'll do that. The developer will be here. Yeah, I responded. Thanks. Thanks for reminding. Is technology up and running?
Right, I'd like to share my screen.
You see it? Oh, I can get it.
Testing.
Okay. Well, I think we'll start our session with open prayer. Tina.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful to be able to meet together today. We're grateful to be able to discuss the planning of Orem City, and we ask for a spirit of cooperation and respect as we go forward with this meeting today. And we ask for these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Tina. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Well, maybe. Yeah, the slides won't move. Oh, there you go. Yep, yep. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, item 3.1 is a river district. The applicant is requesting the city enact section 221164 PD 51, which would create a new PD zone and also a new appendix YY in the city code by changing the zone of 3.15 acres from the business park zone to the PD 51 zone. This is a location. And you can see that in a PD zone, it's a requirement to be 500 feet from University Parkway, State Street, or 800 North. So this is showing that they are more than 500 feet from 800 North. And it also shows you what the current zoning is. It's all business park or BP at the current time. This is their concept plan. They would take the one lot and split it into two lots. So you'd have lot 1 and 2, and they would develop this lot into 25 units, residential units. They're required also in the PD zone to have 2.5 parking stalls per unit, which would be 63, and they are providing 88, which is more than required. This is what the existing plat looks like with it all as one lot. This is a proposed plat, and they would only be rezoning that part in red into the PD 51 zone. The other part of that would remain BP. This is the existing zoning, showing it all as BP, and this is splitting it into the PD 51. This is a traffic circulation showing that the road between the units would be private, and that also there would be a larger road, public road, connecting them to the other part of the development, which is in Provo. This lies right on the border of Provo and Orem. So most of this development will be in Provo, and Orem just has a smaller portion of that. These are the elevations. And in the staff report, I think I put the wrong height. So the correct height would be 36 feet 9 inches total, or a maximum. And in this PD 51 zone, 40 feet is allowed. So they are still within that height requirement. This is the proposed text to create the PD 51 zone. And this is what it looks like now from 1550 East and University Avenue. And do you have any questions for me or the applicant?
And is the applicant here?
Yes.
Would you please come into the stand? Just mention your name, and we have a few questions for you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Ivory. I am with Folger Pratt Development, and we are the applicant.
Great. Tina, go ahead.
Yeah, my first question was about 8th North and a potential stoplight there at 1550. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to that.
I can. We have met on several occasions, both with Orem Engineering and Public Works, as well as UDOT. 8th North is a UDOT road. We would take no exception. In fact, we would like to have a traffic light at 1550. I saw the one public comment that came, and it was a family that had that lives off of Palisade, you know, and they said, you know, fix Palisade, and while you're at it, you know, 1550 would be good as well. I know there's some line and grade issues with 8th North, both elevation changes and a curve, which makes it tough. In our discussions with UDOT, we've even offered up some land. We would dedicate some land if it would help fix things. You know, it's tough. And I think as we've looked at it, it requires more than just a single stoplight at 1550. I think there's larger global changes that would need to happen further west on 8th North in order to really, you know, make some changes. They do have other plans that might include I believe a median that would that would force a right in, right out. And if that's the case, you know, we'll end up living with that. It's just at this point, as we've met with UDOT, we're kind of at their mercy, and there's a lot of projects in the state, and I've learned a lot about the budgeting process, and you know, and how priorities get assigned, et cetera. So we take no exception to it, but I don't know if it's definitely not within our control as the applicant, and I don't even think it's a city issue.
Okay, thank you.
How is the process going with Provo? Have you presented any of this project to them? Has it gone through the planning commission or?
We have a planning commission date on September 14th. We anticipate it will be approved. But there's been, you know, early on we had some meetings, and it was, you know, Jason and Sam, you know, drove some of it. They started coordinating with their counterparts in Provo. And you know, so we've even had meetings with like Provo mayor, and you know, so I think everyone at this point is on the same page from both cities as far as, you know, alignment of roads. And even though you have different zoning codes, it still is going to feel like one cohesive neighborhood.
And how much of that project, like percentage-wise, is in Orem?
I believe we have 198 units in Provo and 25 in Orem. So okay, maybe a little more than 10%.
What's the intended use for those units? Are they to be owner occupied?
These are townhomes for rent, and so it's part of a master plan. You know, kind of the impetus behind it was one of the project sponsors, when he and his family moved to the area, could not find a house to rent. You know, he'd outgrown an apartment. You know, couldn't find anywhere to live because there was literally nothing for rent that wasn't an apartment unit. And you know, his comment was, where do we go with 3 active kids? I don't want to live in the you know, I don't want to live in the Costco parking lot, or I don't want to live adjacent to a big city street. And so you know, we could have max density, we could have pushed it. We intentionally did not push it. We've tried to maintain open space and create a townhome community for rent, because that's, you know, there's a big need for that. I went on Zillow this afternoon, and in the general area, if you look at, you know, kind of Provo, River Bottoms, Orem, kind of that general area, there is 1 4-bedroom home for rent in the general area. As far as rental homes that are 2-bedroom, 2-bath or more, in all of Orem and Provo, there's 36 homes on the market that are rentals. You know, that's townhomes, single family, et cetera. So there's a big need for rental housing that isn't apartments, and we feel that this will help fill that niche.
So you were talking about not wanting to live next to a busy street, and I think this project is next to a lot of busy streets in 8th North and University, and what are you going through? And my other question to you is, when you say it's for rent, is it short-term rental or long-term rental? Is it for families to be there for months, or is it Airbnb?
No, this is not Airbnb. This is not short-term rental. So I anticipate you would have a standard 1-year lease.
Okay. Has this project been presented to the city as Airbnb and restaurants? Because I heard that in the pre-meeting. Can anybody in the city speak to that?
I can speak a little bit to that. A hospitality use is allowed in the rest of the zone, which the reason we're pursuing a zone change is because residential is not a permitted use in the current zoning. And so we want to, you know, use this little sliver of land and continue the townhome community. We are looking at some additional uses, but that's, you know, for the rest of the business park, but that's kind of phase 2, and we can only bite off so much, you know, at one time. But if you have heard restaurants and Airbnb, or restaurants and a you know, hospitality shorter term stay, we have looked at that. It's just it's on the boards, but we haven't, you know, solidified anything. That's kind of phase two, and it's further down the road.
How far down the path are you with Provo?
With Provo, we're well down. I would say Provo and Orem are concurrent as far as the residential goes. So it's just, I'm a week from now, we go before Provo Planning Commission. So it's almost, we're 1 week behind in Provo.
Okay, and can anybody, Sam, how much of Orem is a rental units? What's the percentage of Orem homes are rentals right now? Jason, you may have the answer to that question.
Yeah, I don't have that. I deal with pipes. He deals with the rentals.
It's around 40%, I believe.
40, okay. Last I heard was about 46.
That's all units, yeah. So if we're looking, single family homes, things like that, that's overall citywide. So we don't know. We'd have to get into the details on certain type of housing, what the rental is.
But if this zoning goes through, we have absolutely no guarantees on how much of it will be short term and how much will be a year.
No, there's
contract. Thank you, Jason.
We have no intention of operating these units on a short term rental basis.
So why did we hear that in the pre-planning meeting that was going to be hospitality and quite a few
property
Airbnbs?
next to it is what they're talking about. So
In the Provo side?
No, not in, I can't point to the screen, but if you look to your left.
Further north,
Further,
as you continue north, up towards.
Adjacent to 8th North.
Yes.
And that says future development. Is that going to require rezoning as well?
It will not, if they do it according to the BP zone.
Okay.
So that part, a hotel, motel type uses are permitted in the PP zone itself. So they're coming in for the PD zone for that portion because like you stated, the residential is not permitted. A PD zone is really the only option they can do for that specific location. What they want to do in phase 2 would be just meeting the current BP zone, which restaurants would be allowed. They're here for you tonight for the fast food portion, which is not currently allowed, but restaurants are allowed, hotels, motels, those type of things are currently allowed in the BP zone.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Sorry to keep you coming up on that.
No, actually, no, but you said that this is the only option for this piece of property. You said converting this to a PD zone is the only option. Why would it be?
Only option for residential.
Okay, for residential. Okay.
Yes, not the only option. Yes. So I may have missed.
Yeah, our current business park zoning is pretty constraining, and that was the other portion of the text amendment that we asked to be considered. Our architecture needs to match the is it Nexio? It needs to match the Nexio building, and we've looked at that and said, well, we kind of want to be different than the Nexio architecture, which was the other strike through that we had made on the text amendment.
Are these units, will they be governed by a HOA, or how is that going to work for people living in these?
There'll be a property management group, and it would be operated much like a standard apartment community, only these are townhomes for rent. So there's property management, there's on-site maintenance, et cetera, and of course there'll be restrictions on people's leases, similar to what you would find in an HOA.
Okay. Any other questions regarding that? Well, this is a big project, and there are 198 units right in Provo and about 25 in Orem.
Yes.
I have made a couple of calls to the Provo City Council members, and they have no idea about that project. They have not seen it so far, the ones I talked to. So, which is interesting to find out today. And I know we've had this packet for about a week, so we try to do as much homework as possible. And I think we do have a little bit of work to do with Provo regarding this project, especially with the roads. I was talking to Sam, he was explaining. Sam, would you recount what you said about the roads in that section? Because when you said the developer said, I have everything done with Provo, and then you called Provo and Provo said, no, that's not true. We need to redo quite a few roads.
Right. So in the beginning of this project, when it was first presented to us, that's when I reached out to Provo to find out, hey, where are we at with this? Because it's being represented that everyone's on board that wasn't the case. We obviously have worked through, because in the initial phase of this, or the proposal, the roadway was a little bit more circuitous. It didn't look or feel like a public road. With those concerns from Orem as well as Provo, we essentially presented a unified front, went back to the developer, said, this is what we want to see. And then they came back with this proposal, which you know, from all intents and purposes is going to look like a public road. It's going to feel like a road. Before they had units that were backing onto the road, which would have created a lot of friction. And now it looks and feels like a road, which is exactly what we wanted. I mean, it makes more sense if I'm Provo to, yeah, let's have an easement. The road is private. That way that this whole HOA community is going to be responsible for the maintenance. So essentially for a road standpoint, it's kind of a win-win because the public can use it, but then the city doesn't have to be responsible to maintain it. Now, for me, it really doesn't matter because it's Orem, right? And it's not our road, but for us, we wanted to make sure we had that public connection to another public street, because that way, if anyone wanted to access any of these units, they have two points of access. They can either come off of 8th North, or they could come in through Provo's, I know it's 4800 North, and then there's another road to the north of it. River Run. So there's multiple ways to access this, which is what we wanted. And this is where we've settled. So yeah, I think it's a great plan as far as for access points, but it's going to be up to the planning commissions and city councils on what they want for zoning and all the housing units. But from a transportation standpoint, it works pretty well.
Okay, thanks, Sam.
And Mr. Siccardi, to your point, you know, I think we've had 4 submittals to each jurisdiction as we've gone through the process. I'm not sure how staff updates council members on upcoming developments, et cetera. We haven't made the rounds to individual council members to talk about the development, but you know, obviously we've been, you know, we've gone through 4 rounds of plan check on this initial application, and you know, after round 2, Provo came back and said Orem Public Works has comments, and that was what he was describing there with you know, when we had to make site plan changes in Orem to accommodate, or in Provo to accommodate Orem request. But you know, it was a little painful, but at the end of the day, I think it made everything better.
Okay.
Sorry, what did Orem request?
Public roads. Or Provo was okay with private streets, and we were trying to keep it quaint and have traffic calming measures. And Orem came back and said, we don't, you know, they spoke with Public Works in Provo and came back, and we ended up putting in, you know, streets. They're still private streets, but they're built to a public standard.
Were the roads going to connect initially?
They've always connected. There's always been a way to drive from Provo through this community and exit into Orem.
To Jim's credit, after multiple meetings with staff, they rearranged their plan and came up with what we think is a much better plan in terms of transportation. And so, Jim, we do appreciate you working with us. And I think we're at a much better place than when we started.
No, absolutely.
Where do you anticipate most of the traffic ingress and egress?
I think for the most part, it will come in and out of Provo.
And I think this is one of my biggest concerns is you have access to university and then access to 8th North. And I live in that neighborhood. I've witnessed quite a few accidents. One of them was disabling to Mary Jones right on 8th North by the project. So the concern I have is this is 223 units with 2.5 parking spots each. And lots of people will be making a left turn either on University or on 8th North. And these 2 left turns are nightmares. We're already having a hard time with the 1440, let alone the 1550 or the 1400. So and after talking to Sam about the beginning of the project, where there was some sort of misalignment, but we do appreciate you coming back because we understand that the city does a great deal of work to make sure that this works for the city first. And I know that you would have to work with them to make that project go through. At the same time, we've only received the packet last week, and you may have seen it 4 times. We've only seen it for a week, and we started seeing the public comments and quite a few emails and text after that. But that's my only concern is I think we need to sit on it for a little bit, to talk to Provo a little bit more. At least that's in my opinion. I'm not talking for the planning commission, and each person can go and put their opinion in there. I just feel like we need a little bit more time to speak to Provo, especially after calling today and finding out that what I thought is ready to go in Provo is not. But what do you think, Tina?
I think we need to open it up to the public.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it is a public hearing, so we'll open it up to the public. Please come into the stand, state your name. You don't have to state your address. And you got a few minutes.
Hi, my name's Lynette Kern. I served on the 8th North Moratorium Committee years ago. It was probably like more than 20 years ago, but a lot of the reasons we made design decisions was because of the issues with, the traffic and living in that area. Like you stated, there are a lot of accidents and problems with the ingress and egress off 8th North. And I know for a fact, you can't make any promises about what UDOT's going to do with that light there. And in fact, UDOT has said in the past that they will not put a light there because of how close it is to the other lights and the corner there. You can't change the rules that they already have set. So if you choose to go forward with it, I understand the land needs to be developed, and that, I'm not trying to say development can't happen, but you have to do it in a way that you're saying that it's good without a light, however it goes, because that light's not going to happen. So.
You're correct. We faced the same thing on 1600 North with the lights by the Maverick and the light by Home Depot, where they were too close to each other and there's no way it's going to get a light there.
Right.
And I think you were facing the same issue, and we can't pass something on the hope that UDOT will change their mind.
The one other issue I would say is once the zoning is changed, owners can change in the future. So whatever one owner promises in the present, you cannot hold a new owner to those standards. Whatever the zone allows for, then new owners are allowed to do. So, that's all.
Thank you. And we did face that before as well.
I take no exception. If you want to put a condition on it that these will be operated, as a rental community and not a short-term rental, I have no problem with that.
Well, we can't do that by law.
Okay.
We can't tell you what to do with your property as far as renting it short-term or long-term.
So can I just make a comment on the PD zone itself?
Yeah.
So we do tie the developer to the concept plan elevations and those things that are part of the PD. So a developer is tied to that concept plan. So in the event that they sell and a new developer comes in, they would have to come back through this process if they wanted to change from what's already approved in the PD zone. So we do have that ability to hold them to a specific standard that's adopted.
Well, thanks for correcting that, Jason.
The other thing I'd like to point out, just as far as traffic goes, if we went with just the straight business park zoning that already exists, that creates more traffic. There's more trips associated with office and business park than there's with residential. So if it developed under the current, maximum density that's permitted with the business park, we'd be generating more traffic.
Sam? Sorry, would you speak to that comment about the traffic based on medium density housing or business park? Would it be more or less traffic?
Well, there's a few things there. Right now, currently, the way our transportation master plan is written, a residential unit in Orem produces about 14 trips per day. So you have that component to it. Not understanding what they're going to have in there for a fast food restaurant is kind of hard to predict what's going to create more traffic. I think we all could realize if we dropped in an In-N-Out or a Chick-fil-A there, that's going to be a lot different than a Zaxby's. Both of them are fast food, but obviously one's a little bit more popular than the other. So a traffic impact study would need to be done. And then as far as the 8th North, and I apologize, I was discussing the reasons why UDOT hasn't looked at putting in a median and some other things. UDOT's stance is they're trying to be more sensitive to businesses. And I think they've tried to leave that access there as a full access, because understanding if they put in a median, you would likely put Will's Pit Stop and Mama Choose out of business. And they don't necessarily want to be in the business of putting people out of business. So I think UDOT is aware of the accidents. They're aware of the trips. They're just trying to, walk a fine line and understanding there are a lot of accidents, that there's a lot of near misses there. I think they would like to put in some sort of a safety improvement. With that being said, we've identified on our transportation master plan that there needs to be some sort of an intersection improvement in this area, whether it's a signal with a lot of advanced warning of the signal changing, or it's going to be a median or a modified type of a median that allows lefts in, but restricts the left out, I think is probably going to be in the future. But when you start looking at trips and whatnot, it's kind of a crystal ball. And I don't know if many of you have looked at traffic impact studies, but there's actually kind of a range that you're given to say, okay, how many trips the site, and it's based on square footage. And actually a lot of that has kind of all been a science, but now, or it's more of an art than a science, but now you have COVID and you have these different traffic patterns and it's a little bit harder to predict. But what I can say is that, typically residential units do create a little bit more traffic than commercial. But it depends on the type of commercial that goes in, because if you have something that happens to hit a home run, if it's a crumble cookie, if it's a great Thai restaurant or whatever, I mean, you could have traffic be absolutely crazy, or it could be a spot where you're rotating through and it may take a while before to generate a lot. So, but I think to everyone's point, I think you're going to have a lot of right-ins and right-outs. I don't know if you're going to have a lot of left-outs in this area. And I think the majority of the traffic is going to be traveling through Provo. So is there anything I missed in that explanation?
No, we we wanted to hear about the traffic difference between residential homes and commercial. And that's the point we needed to get.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's still it's open to the public. If anybody else has comments, please come and state your name. Or if you have any questions.
Julie Smith, I'm working with the developer and owner. And true to what Sam said, and the big difference is the residential is kind of all day long. Moms come and go to the grocery stores, where office and business park is more, everybody comes in the morning, huge traffic, everybody leaves at the same time. So that's the big difference, where Jim said that the homes create less. That is true if you look at when is a high concentration of traffic.
AM and PM,
Yeah,
AM
if you
and
look
PM
at the
peak
numbers.
hours.
Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you, Ms. Julie. Okay, if nobody else has any questions or comments, we'll close the public hearing section, but the planning commission members are definitely welcome to ask any more questions.
I just think we ought to wait till Provo takes action before we take action. That's for a second. A second, I seem to recall we had designated in our plan that this was going to be some kind of a tourist zone. So I don't know. I think it might be a little bit premature, but I don't know. So I guess, yeah, I guess we'll ask the developer when they come back. If we don't approve it, will Provo still go through? That would be an interesting thing. to
And I have a couple of calls aligned with them this week to find out what's going on. Okay, Madeline.
I'm about in the same place. I think we need to see what's going on with Provo before we can make a decision. I think tabling it would be appropriate.
Jim and Jared.
I'm concerned about the traffic, and otherwise I'm impressed with what they're looking to do. But we're a small part of this project, and it seems like what Provo does will affect what we proceed to do.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And you guys did a great job. Don't get us wrong. The design is incredible. The work with the city, both cities, is phenomenal. Now, Sam, is there a possibility for that road, for any other options for that road, for the 8th North entrance and exit? Is there closing it down? Is it a possibility? Or
you mean to put in a median across and just allow a right in on both sides, a right in and a right out?
But that's UDOT's decision, it's not ours. We can't do anything about it.
Right. And the thing, I was discussing this with Aaron, is that the one outlier that we have there is that Central Utah Water Conservancy District operates the Olmsted power plant, and their office is up in the old Exactware building. So I would think Central Utah, with their connections with the federal government, they would at least be wanting to lobby for a left in. So it would be a median similar to what was just completed here on State Street and 100 North, where you're allowed to turn a left off of State Street and go on 100 North. But if you're on 100 North heading west, wanting to take a left and go south, you can't now because there's a median in the way. So I could foresee, a signal I think is going to be a stretch, even though we've put that bug in their ear. We're asking for some sort of intersection improvement with speeds being what they are. I just don't know if a signal will ever be there, but I could easily see some sort of a modified median that would allow lefts to both go into this development and to the north, but it just wouldn't allow a left out, is what I would see, just because you got higher speeds. If you're doing a left out, you're trying to cross five lanes of traffic. It just seems pretty dangerous.
That's my biggest concern, is the speed with which people travel on 800
Right.
North. Coming out of the canyon, if you're trying to come out of Will's Pit Stop, just on the north side of 8th North and wanting to turn and go east, you wait a long time.
Sure.
And just when you think you're clear, you're not. And I can't imagine that a street light could be put in that proximity, because how would you back those cars up that are coming around the corner?
Right. And that's why it's really a complex scenario to try and solve. So I think that's why they've waited. They're kind of, yeah.
Is there any way that you could restrict the ingress and egress into that area from going into the development? I don't know that you could do that. In other words, you couldn't cut it off completely, the access into 800 North from what you're proposing to do. I'm not terribly well familiar with that, with all of the roads in there, but it would seem to me like that, just that temptation of someone to go out on 800 North, just one mishap is a serious consequence.
Right. And I mean, yeah, the reality is once this were to be built and developed, and maybe because, I mean, we run into this phenomena every fall when we have new students coming to Orem. They don't understand some of the traffic patterns and whatnot. It seems we have an uptick in speeding. We have an uptick in people not understanding a roundabout and all kinds of things. And that might be a concern, where this is somewhat of a rental community where you're having folks in there for a year. I mean, there is going to be some learning. We can definitely look to engage with UDOT to see what they're wanting to do for some sort of a safety improvement. And like I said, I think you would still allow the right in and the right out. It would just be the left out that we would be.
Why doesn't someone just engage with UDOT then? I mean, why, if you can do that, why don't we do that?
Let me clarify. We actually have a study that we did about 8 years ago when Paul Goodrich was here, and it went through and identified access to this entire area. And the end result was to put a median into 8th North and restrict lefts out. And that's what UDOT has kind of shared with us that they're going to do.
Is that
at some
something
point.
we can mandate in order to get this moving along? Or we have
We
absolutely no
as
power. with
city
UDOT?
employees have no power over what UDOT does, but they've pretty much told us that they're going to put a median in. If
But when's the last time we
development happens.
engaged in discussion with?
Oh, we talk to them monthly, and
Do
this
you?
project's always on our agenda. So this isn't something we haven't been
Is
talking
that-
about.
Is that something the developer is willing to talk to UDOT and pay for?
We've
it?
already spoken with UDOT, and we paid for a traffic study to get the ball rolling on a number of different options. Ultimately, there is a memorandum of understanding that was executed between UDOT, Provo, and Orem that outlines a number of proposed future improvements on these intersections. But again, that's out of our power. So conditioning, putting a condition on us for UDOT to do something is, it's not within my power. It's not within the city's power. It's a state agency. And again, we've talked to them, and they've explained, how priorities get set. And it starts at the state legislature with the budget, and they set aside dollars for whatever they deem the most important projects in Utah.
Well, that's understood.
Yeah, we get that.
But why can't we engage with UDOT again? I mean, we can call on.
Would the developer be willing to pay for that median?
Would we be willing to pay for the median?
If it changes the budget rules with UDOT and it becomes a priority project? I mean, I've seen that happen before. We've witnessed it happen before. The developer has paid.
I don't know that necessarily would be a holdback for UDOT to do something.
Yeah.
Realigning the road and putting in a signal is a much bigger issue, but doing a median, UDOT can find money for it.
I'm trying to find a way for this to go through. So if it means.
And ultimately, if it's not a big deal. The proposal that they have, a right in, right out, which would, as far as 1550 right in, right out of from onto 8th North from our proposal, or from our project, that we're fine with that. And that's not that big a deal. Yes, we would pay for that. We would pay for that improvement. The problem will be, as was discussed, what Will's Pit Stop and Mama Choose, and the limitation of making the left-hand turn into their business.
Yeah.
And we understand it's a complicated intersection. And the unfortunate thing is after Mary Jones' accident, it just left a terrible, terrible scene in the whole in 8th North issue. So we're trying to find a good way for it to go through without creating risk in people's life and that turn. That's just my big concern, having lived there for 8 years, watching her progress, trying to get out of the wheelchair after the accident. So it's a tough one. We want something to be done. We're not against the project. We just want to get more data. We've only had it for 5-6 days to look at. We didn't know anything about it till we received the packet. And I know you've been working hard with the city, and that's the same case with every developer. They work with the city for months before we see it. And if there's something light and we can work with, we do it right away. It's something this massive with 223 units, and we have no idea what kind of term if rental goes in. We can't impose on you any difference. We don't have any development contracts like Linden City does. So I mean, I want to see a project going. You've done a phenomenal job. I just think we could stay for 1 or 2 times to learn more about it. It's not saying we're not doing it.
Yeah, which is fine. My only question would be, I come back, I think, do you guys meet twice a month?
Yeah.
So 2 weeks from now, I come back and my project's been approved in Provo. What would have changed, between now and then?
It's a really good question. We'll find out. That's why we're trying to call Provo and trying to learn more about your project. So it's a great question. If I have the answer, I'll give it to you right now. Nothing may change and something may change. And we'll find that out in the stay.
All right.
So that's my opinion. So if anybody else has, what? You have any comment, Jared? Okay. So Jason will need your help with that too, as far as making the motion.
It would just be a motion to continue it for 2 weeks, or as long as you want, I guess. If Provo, what date is Provo meeting? Do we know specifically?
The 14th.
Okay, so our next meeting is the 21st. So
which is not far off.
We would know. I mean, if Planning Commission in Provo approves it, we would have that information. If they choose to continue it as well, then we could do it again on the 21st. So I would just make a motion.
We may never have an answer about traffic at all. It may have to be what it is at some point. So
there's just a simple motion to continue it for 2 weeks. It'd be a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion to continue this consideration for 2 weeks, or whatever period of time before Provo makes their determination.
Okay.
I second the motion.
Yeah. Jim?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Next item, please, Cheryl. Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, I'm still up.
Oh, man.
He's still in the hot seat.
Okay.
Okay, item 3.2 is a text amendment to change the SLU code or just to allow fast food for fast food in the BP zone.
Okay.
This is the proposed text. Right now, fast food is not allowed in that zone. So this would change it so that it would be allowed, it would be a permitted use, and it would be consistent. It would be specified that it's consistent throughout each individual project area of that BP zone. So staff recommends a positive recommendation. However, these two need to go through together. So since you continued the first one, it's up to you if you want to.
Well, I have a question or two for Sam. Sorry, Sam, it's been your day today.
It's a busy day.
It's a busy day. Fast food versus destination restaurant. What was the difference when we're talking about it in the pre-meeting? A destination restaurant is like a sit down restaurant. It takes a little bit longer time.
Correct.
And traffic is different between that and fast food.
Yes, it has the potential to be, yes.
Okay. And it depends. And we don't know. I mean, we have no idea which fast food restaurants will apply for that project.
Right. And then understanding too, for this text amendment, it would allow fast food restaurant to come in this area. Then with those things coming in, we would still want a traffic impact study. These restaurants are probably going to have a little more closer access to 8th North. We would be looking at that. Some of those things could be like he had mentioned, if we have to put in for lack of a better term, it's a pork chop, but it's a median that actually sits right in the middle of the intersection that actually encourages the right in and the right out. That could be part of some of these developments that come in. Obviously, this is a little bit further away, wouldn't necessarily need that at this point, but if you go through with this, you approve the fast food as part of the BP zone, understanding that when anything comes through in that area, we'll have an updated traffic impact study and those things will be added to it and we can look at those.
So I have two questions about that. The first one, if my memory serves me right, when we approved the McDonald's in 8th North, the comment I received was, whatever they do on their property is their house. If their house is messy, that's their problem. All we care about is what comes out on 8th
Right,
North.
but you got to understand that 1550 is my road. So if I have a lot of delay and people are trying to turn left and they're backing up and backing up and backing up, then that's my problem. And then we want to make sure they go out on McDonald's on the mall property. If they want to back into that parking lot, make it a mess, it's up to them.
I really love the way you explained it. It's my road. I love you taking ownership. That's great. So could you approve one and not the other, restaurants, but not fast food?
Really, it's going to be, I mean, for us, I think they're going to be one and the same. And when they when those come in, we're going to look at the impact study and all that's going to be based on parking as well. You look at the McDonald's, it's more of a fast food. You have more queuing. So it's a different animal than if you were to compare it to a Costa Vida or a Cafe Rio, where it's more sit down oriented. So that they're both going to have their challenges for their site plans. So for me, it's going to be, one, it's going to be the parking, it's going to be the queuing. There's all kinds of different components when you start looking at restaurants. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
And just for clarification, in the BP zone, currently restaurants are allowed, but not restaurants with drive-throughs.
Okay.
Is that a correct?
That is correct.
That is correct.
And if a restaurant comes in, say, an In-N-Out or whatever restaurant it is, they will have to come through for site plan approval. So it's not like you'll have that chance to review it when it comes through for site plan approval.
I was just
No,
clarifying.
he answered. Yep. He was watching you.
I'm staying here now.
That's good. Okay.
I move we continue the amendment until the next meeting.
Okay.
I second that.
Great. Tina?
Aye.
Oh, wait, that's a public hearing.
I was gonna say, this is a public hearing.
It is a public hearing.
You can choose to continue that to the next session too. We just need to be sure that the next time it's addressed.
Okay.
That
Thank
you
you,
open up the
Aaron.
public hearing at that time, or you can do it now and not do it then, or you can do it now and then, but
We'll just do it
be
then
aware of that.
in the next round. Okay. Tina, start over again. Sorry.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, item 3.3 is Kelly Subdivision Plat E, and it's approving the preliminary plat of Kelly Subdivision Plat E. A couple months ago, they came through for a rezone from R8 to the R6 zone, and now they're coming back through with the preliminary plat. This shows its location, and it's R6. This is the preliminary plat showing their buildable area, and this is the proposed plat. And it showed, this has 2 lots. This is what it looks like now. And staff recommends approval of this. Do you have any questions for me or the applicant?
Is the applicant here? Do you have any questions for us or you want to say anything else? They covered it?
No, I think that takes care of it.
Okay, perfect. All right, and okay, well, that's with us. Okay.
I move that we approve this request.
Okay, well, so we have to read the text. We have to read the text, yeah.
Right. Okay, I'll just read the whole thing. I recommend we approve the preliminary plat of Kelly Subdivision Plat E, located generally at 663 South, 350 West in the R6 zone.
I second. Jim?
I second it.
2 seconds. How do you beat that? Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
All right, item 3.4 is Cherry Oaks Estate Plat Plat B. They're vacating lots 5 and 8 of Cherry Oak Estates Plat A and they're creating a new Plat B. This shows the location. There's currently 2 lots. They want to subdivide that into 3 lots. This shows the preliminary plat, and you can see on lot 2 that they will be removing those buildings. The home on lot 1 will remain. This is the existing plat and the proposed plat. And this is what it looks like now. And again, those buildings will be removed. And staff recommends approval. And do you have any questions for me or the applicant?
Is the applicant here? Do you have any comments or anything you want to add to this? Okay. Now, this is a public hearing, so, but before we open to the
I was
public.
going to ask, are you developing yourself? Do you have a developer or?
No, kind of ourselves, with the idea of having 2 homes there. It initially started to bring my parents from Arizona, so they'd be close because we're in the home right behind. So when we had the opportunity to buy that property, we jumped. It's so large that you don't want to.
No, great job. And
I happen to live in proximity to that location, and that will beautify our neighborhood. I walk past that occasionally, not frequently enough, but I move to approve.
wait, it's a public hearing, Jim.
Public hearing?
Yeah, we need to open it for the public first.
Who would
So
ever
we open
oppose
this
it?
portion of the meeting to the public. If anybody has comments, please come up front. Okay, no public comments. We'll close that portion of the meeting. And Jim, if you want to go forward.
Yeah, I recommend that we approve the vacation of lots 5 and 8 of the Cherry Oaks Estates Plat A and approve Cherry Oak Estates Plat B, located generally at 235 West, 800 South in the R8 zone.
I second it.
Right. Okay, Jim.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Next item, Cheryl.
All right, item 3.5 is amending sign zone, the sign zone map and the sign zone code to extend sign zone E to include a portion of the Centerpoint Church property. This shows the location of that property between the I-15 and Sand Hill Road. And this is the existing plat. This is the current sign zone E, which is, there's a property between Centerpoint Church and the end of existing sign zone E. So they want to extend that down to include just a little bit past their building. So it would look like this. It will not include their entire property, just the northern portion. This is where they want to put the sign. And this is a concept plan of that sign. They want to use it to advertise what their events are for different holidays or weekly, or right now they're using a banner on their building. So this will make it a lot easier for them to let people know what events they have coming up. This is the street views from the I-15 and from Sand Hill Road. And staff recommends a positive recommendation to the city council. Do you have any questions?
If we extend that through a different applicant's property, is that other property aware that the sign zone will be extended through?
That I'm not sure. Microphone.
Yes, they emailed me and I emailed back and forth with them and they were okay with it.
They were aware and they're okay?
They're aware.
Okay.
So we notified them they did for the neighborhood meeting, and we notified them for this meeting as well. So they're notified of, and in addition to they call them, we do notify them, let them know.
Yeah, thank you. We only noticed that Sherry Crimson is the only one that showed up to the neighborhood meeting. Well, how does the city feel about the digital signs? What's the position of digital signs when it comes to the city's point of view?
As long as it meets the ordinance, we're fine with it. And that's why they want to extend sign zone E, because right now where they are these digital signs are not allowed. So if they extend sign zone E, they are allowed in that sign zone, which would give them the same opportunities as businesses a little bit further to the north.
Yeah, I mean, and my understanding is the business farther to the north can put a digital sign at any time. It's right on the property line. Okay.
So without being, excuse me, in sign zone E, their only option is a monument sign. So the way that it's written now with the zone, that are not in a sign zone, and so it just defers to a monument sign, 6 feet by 36. That's the max they can do right now. So this opens up the ability for them to have a freeway sign.
Okay. Well,
And how big can that sign be?
I'd have to look, but there is a maximum. I think it's 225 square feet, but there is a max size that they can have. It's typical what you see along I-15, not the billboards, but the typical signs that you see along there.
well, the concept plan is shown 4.5 by 10 by 11.
Right. And that's well within the size.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, this is a public hearing. We'll open it to the public. Please state your name and any comments you have.
Excuse me. I'm Reed Cope. I live like a block away from that. Signage is fine, but I'm thoroughly against any kind of lit digital sign. I don't want to have to see that off Sand Hill Road or off of 1600 West or in my backyard, which, you know, runs very close to Sand Hill Road. I don't want any bright lit digital double-sided signs. If they wanted, if the city wanted to go ahead and allow it, I would advise that it be, the sign would be placed further back in that green yard portion that runs alongside the building, and it wouldn't, and the sign, said sign wouldn't be any higher than said building. So everybody in my neighborhood wouldn't have to see it. And I highly suggest you don't change the code to include lit, bright, you know, digital signage all over, because there'll just be more and more and more as development takes place. And my backyard's lit up enough as it is with all the condos and apartments across the street, across Sand Hill Road. And it's a drag. I mean, development's inevitable, but please no digital double-sided signage. You know, if it's something for the freeway that can only be seen on the freeway, great. They can place it somewhere else, or they can buy set advertising or buy some setup closer to the freeway that they can light up and be bright and everybody can see, but please not in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Is the applicant here? Would you please come state your name, and we have a few questions.
Chris Allen, and I'm one of the staff members, and I'm overseeing this project.
Great. He was mentioning if the sign goes in that grass area, that may work well with the neighbors. I mean, I do see that the sign is not higher than the building; it's about the same height, so it wouldn't be visible above the building.
Yep.
Is that something you would consider?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think at the top of our priority list, obviously, is to be a blessing in the community. So the goal would not be, I think originally we were thinking, would it be advantageous to place this sign on Sand Hill Road? We've considered putting a sign there because we don't have a sign for the church other than what's on the building. That corner, we figured, you know what, there's just not as much traffic there. We've had 3 car accidents on that corner that have wiped out the street light. So we don't think we should put anything there. More advantageous to be on the freeway, especially for students who are northbound.
Yeah.
So that's probably who ends up seeing this more than anybody. Southbound, it's a double-sided sign so that southbound can see it. I don't think they're actually going to see it very well. There's that high median in between the northbound and southbound. So we've considered pushing it. You can kind of see there on the north end of the lot. We considered putting it just kind of past the lawn. There's that easement road that we've got back there. If we did that, we would only do a one-sided because southbound would not see it for sure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's not as close to the freeway, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would be just as close to the freeway as the current location that we're proposing. It would just be further north. And so the line of sight, we think that the old Stevens Henniger building, which just got purchased, I don't know who bought it. But that building would probably block any visibility of the opposite side of it. So we're open to that. Ideally, if we go through the hassle of putting a sign on a pole, both sides would have a chance to see it. But if only northbound sees it, then we would take that.
Could you move it a few feet, like 10, 15 feet north, right at the edge of the grass where it's right behind the building, but you're not going all the way to the easement?
Good question. It's possible. I have to look and see where, that's kind of a retention pond more or less right there. So we'd have to look and see where it clears the drain and where it starts to slope down. In my mind's eye, I want to say that there is a little bit, in fact, there's a tree, you can kind of see it on there. There's a tree that would put us, maybe you can zoom in on it. There's a tree that we could remove where we could place it right there. It would be shielding the neighborhood because now I think that south end of our facility would block it. So what would you say to that? Kind of into the grass.
On the grass triangle.
Right,
Yes.
right where the tree is. Yep.
The
Right-
northwest
right where the
side
tree is.
of the triangle, is that a drain?
Northwest.
But that's
yes.
farthest.
It drops. Yes, it is.
We were thinking in
I was
in
thinking.
the
But we're
south.
talking
would be
the
a good place
south.
The
for
south,
sign.
for the south section. Yes.
I have a comment. There, during when this application went through DRC, there was a comment made that there's a private storm drain line somewhere in that area. And there may be other utilities that can affect the placement of the site.
I see.
Yeah, I think I saw that too. They'd have to flag it first. Correct? Okay.
So Mr. Cope, is it? Is that what you said your last name?
Yes.
is? Where would you feel okay about the sign being placed?
Well, if it weren't any higher than the building, so the building could obscure it off of Sam Hill Road, if I were Center Point Church, I would try to put as close to the freeway as I could on my property. I'd put it where that drain is, but I guess you can't. So
Could you, the two of you meet at the site and look at possibilities?
we could.
And you say you speak for your neighbors as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've spoken to many folks and
Yeah.
they're not liking the idea. They just don't want any bright lit, digital, whatever shining all around it. It doesn't matter who it is, whether it's a
Well,
church
you
or
can
other
see
kind of
yeah,
business.
and I drive past that quite often. I think
Yeah.
it'd be an asset to have it, but placing it in the right location is a challenge
Or
here.
possibly on, the west side of this, grass yard. The line that, the side of it that goes parallel with the freeway.
That might
right-
even
Right in the middle there, maybe.
that might even improve visibility. Might even be given.
It's possible. I think from what the developer, the installation company was looking at, it's a little deceiving because on that far west end of the lot, there's a pretty slim area that is raised and it's level with the road, but it drops down into that little recession pretty quick. So we'd either have to go on that southern chunk of grass or perhaps into the other, kind of in the gravel that you see on the north end.
Yeah.
Which we would be open to both. I don't think that we're, whatever's feasible with our utilities, obviously, and all that.
Yeah, just to address that too, it wouldn't be able to go in that northwest quarter where that gravel is. We got a public storm drain that goes
Okay.
through there. There's
Oh.
a 36-inch line.
Okay.
And that's our access road, so we couldn't put the pole sign
So
there.
how far south of there could it be placed and be acceptable?
You
to
would essentially be looking at in that grassy area would possibly be where you could put that along there.
Is that halfway from the north to the south on the property? You see what I'm saying?
So on this plat, there's actually an easement that goes through there that's in favor of Orem City. It's kind of hard to tell from that picture there. There's the plat there that you can see. So we just have a public storm drain that's actually out in Sand Hill Road, goes across that north property line and then continues to the west, goes underneath the freeway. I believe there's a gentleman over here that helped design that named Ryan Clark. So there's a lot of issues with it. But anyways.
I'd like to correct that. It's only along the north property line, Mr. Kelly.
Oh, sorry about that, sir. But anyways, there's one of our pipes there and their private drain actually ties into that. So the private storm drain that comes up from the south is theirs. If they want to go ahead and relocate that, they would be fine to do that. And then the outlet then goes into our public system.
It seems to me we have two issues here under consideration. One is approving of the sign, and from the tenor of the discussion, it sounds like that's not an issue. Of course, I'm speaking for myself, and observing others, but then the next issue is where is the sign to be placed? And if everyone's approving of the sign, then I don't know why the parties that be couldn't meet at the site and determine the best placement for the sign.
Well, I think that would affect how big the zone E was, right? You would only approve the zone E to the corner of that building. So I think that does impact where we draw the line on the zone. Question, how tall is the building? Because I know you said the sign can go 25 feet above the pavement. Is that the top of the sign or the bottom of the sign? How tall is your building?
There's two different elevations. So that south end, could we go back to the
And the reason I asked that, I live near
one more.
UVU and there's all kinds of light pollution from UVU. And if we can get rid of light pollution for residents, I am all in favor of that because it's just annoying. Not the sign's annoying, but just having unneeded light. I know you've already got lots there.
So it's 12 feet. What I would need to confirm, I think that's 16 total, right? I think that's a 12-foot pole with a 4.5-foot sign on top of it. So we're talking 16.5 feet. And that's probably right about that lower elevation right there that you can see. That's, I think, a 15-foot deck. And then the higher elevation is 30 something.
And does the higher elevation go along the entire building where it would shield
No,
people?
it doesn't. So if we were to place this a little bit further back, if you were able to kick that, in fact, you can kind of see the tree back there. That's what I was maybe proposing could be a new location for it. You'd be maybe inches above with this pole, but that's not to say we couldn't drop the pole.
Yeah, I love
this is the
sign.
developers, you know, this is his recommendations, but we're not necessarily tethered to that.
Aaron, we understand that you may need to get involved with this one. This is a religious institution and they enjoy some federal protection. So where are we at with the sign? And I mean, is there anything?
Well, I mean, in terms of, I may need some clarification on your question, but if we approve the extension of the sign zone, it could be a smaller sign, it could be bigger, and ultimately it would just come down to whether or not, the owner of the property is wanting to be helpful to the neighborhood or whether they just want to build their big 25-foot sign and out as far as they want. And so that's just something you should be aware of. Is that what other questions do you have?
Well, go ahead.
I have an ordinance specific question. So
Okay. Well, the question is, I mean, this is just specific to a zoning.
Yes.
It will not be tied to anything of federal protection to religious institutions.
No, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, this is a zone that would apply to the area for whoever's there, right? So right now there's a church. If in the future, it's sold to a different entity and that entity wants to build a sign in a way that causes light to the neighborhood, that would be allowed.
I'm looking at the neighborhood map here. Do you have a neighborhood map to see where his house is? Because I'm seeing a lot of commercial property in this, a big development apartment complex, but where's your house in relation to the sign? I mean, it seems like the sign on the freeway. So how far do you live from there?
I live at 1628 South Wildwood Hollow Drive. So I live slightly east up of 1600 South. And I got quite a big backyard where I can see quite a bit of Sand Hill Road. And I travel a lot on Sand Hill Road and 1600. And we just, the neighborhood, for the most part, we just don't want a bunch of brightly lit digital signage like you see more and more of, like on University Parkway. Also, it's my experience through one of my brothers who worked in signage for decades in LA. There was a big trend that began around, I don't know, 1980, 81 with lower cut, what they called eye level signage. And so I'm looking at their sign they're proposing, which isn't some big giant tall 25 feet, whatever. And it's actually a better design. You want it closer to the freeway, but it's actually a sign that's like that height for Centerpoint Church will capture the eye more as people drive by. Maybe there's a way you could, if you had to approve and change the zoning, if you could amend the zoning so there wouldn't be in the future tall 25-foot, whatever height signage. Because, you know, if you're going to approve Centerpoint, then at some point in time, you're going to have to prove everybody. But if you make some kind of amendment for this set area, then it won't be a big hassle for neighbors in the future until you guys change our zoning and eminent domain us. And eventually we're a bunch of condos and student housing. I'm sure that will happen someday. Hopefully not in mine, but that's all I can think about. You know, no super tall signage, no digital stuff. I like how theirs is lower, and you'll attract more business, more attention. It's better for advertising, having the lower cut, street level, eye level signs.
Appreciate the feedback. That's really valuable, actually. We didn't have anybody other than Jerry show up at the neighborhood meeting. So that was kind of some of the feedback, though, that was good to have because we wanted to know how this was going to impact our neighbors. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was a big trend that started around 79, 80. And advertisers, businesses realized, you know, the value was all psychological, I guess, or just people would see, would catch the eye more, these lower cut, what they called eye level signage. And he was heavily involved in it for a couple decades back in Southern California.
So maybe what I could bring back to our board of directors is something similar to what we're proposing, but perhaps a little bit further north, assuming that we're free of the drainage, any other utilities, obviously, that we'd have to flag, with the top of that, somewhere in the ballpark of the top of our decking on that lower elevation. And that way we're respectful to the neighborhood. Two, just so that this hopefully eases a little bit of the concern. We won't be doing strobe lights and light shows on there or anything like that. It's, in fact, I think what we've got available, it's a pretty small sign when you look at the line of sight heading northbound on the 15. What the sign developer has said is you've got about enough room for 2 lines of text, which is this illustration they gave us is not great, but we won't be necessarily putting video up there. I think the sign has that capability, but there's just not enough time for the person who's driving 75 to really see a video. So as much as we'd love to tempt people with crumble cookies like that other one that's further up the road that's killing our diets, we won't be able to show video on it much that'll be effective. So it's probably going to be 9:45, 11:15 Christmas Eve service, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Would you be more comfortable with that, though? If we pushed it a little bit further north, you wouldn't see it probably from your neighborhood as much. Some of the light kicking off of it might still be there.
If you had it essentially with the building sandwiched you have the sign, it's the building sandwiching it from Sand Hill Road.
Yeah.
You'd be, I think the neighborhood would be a lot less likely to see it. We might still see it here and there, but if you can change its position, like near that rear tree, that northern tree, or somewhere on that lawn, that'd be a lot better, as long as it's not higher than the building.
Okay.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
that's a great suggestion, and I really appreciate you trying to work with the neighborhood. I don't think the sign will do any more light than the parking street light once it's in that location, because there's a lot of parking lot lights in there right next to your house. So having the sign kind of obstructed by the building will not add any more light than that to your house. So what would the staff recommend here on this one, Jason? Would you recommend us to also continue this one to when it comes back with the second design, or approve it based on not having it in that spot?
So, and I'd have to defer to Aaron as far as a development agreement for the location, because once the sign zone is in place, they would just have to meet the requirement. So there's no set location that we can determine, or you can determine that it has to be at this location without some type of agreement. So once you rezone the property, they're basically limited to the maximum height, the maximum square footage. The location can defer. Now they can be willing to do that, but to Aaron's point, in the future, if the church leaves and the commercial business comes in, they could modify the sign and maximize it if they choose to. But it has to be facing I-15. It cannot be facing 12th West. The way that the ordinance is written, it's purposely is designed to attract I-15 traffic, not Sand Hill or 12th West traffic. So it's written in there specifically that the sign has to be placed on I-15 frontage. So that is purposely written that way to avoid getting too close to residential properties. So
Okay. Can we parse the property? I mean, could you literally put the zoning through part of their
which
property,
is
not
what we're
all the way
proposing to
through?
do.
Yeah.
Right. And so it'd be based on that length. And so the square footage would be limited based on wherever that length of zone is. And there's a chart that basically says this amount of frontage, you get the face times 1.2, and then that gives you the maximum square footage. So I think we can limit the size, we can limit the height. It's the location, and the agreement between this property owner, they could put it there. But they would, in the future, if we'd set the line just past their building, then in the future, a developer could only put it in that sign zone area. They couldn't put it south in the parking lot.
Okay.
That was what my question was what the actual wording in the Zone E for signs says about electronic signs. And because it's come up a lot in this, and it's been a couple days since I read it. So I just wanted to be specific about because like you're saying, it can only face I-15. So can it be two-sided, or?
It can be two-sided.
It can be two-sided
Mhm.
and angled.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they could try to capture. It's very difficult on I-15 if you've driven to try to look at across signs. I mean, we have billboards that are, and there's certain parameters that we can do as far as signage goes, but they can optimize their viewing shed, but it does have to be facing or perpendicular. So I mean, obviously you can read it going north or southbound.
No, I don't think we have any other questions. Thanks, Jason. Well, we close the public hearing portion of this meeting, and we will
Well, let me try. So I move that we have a meeting with the property owner, the neighborhood representative, and the city designated city official to best determine where a sign could and should be placed.
Is there any way that the zoning can be amended to keep any kind of signage like this now and in the future lower, like what it's at 12 feet?
I mean, that would be a citywide, the entire I-15 frontage. So I don't know. That'd be something we'd have to consider the entire area and notify all the commercial properties. But I think the point that I would make, if we go back to the site plan, is to limit how far down that property would be included in the sign zone. But as far as putting a limit on the cap, I don't know that we would consider that.
Do it for just one. So
You couldn't do it for this one lot, for example. It's basically sign zone E, which affects the entire corridor. Yeah. So I think it'd be best if, and Aaron, maybe you can address this, maybe a development agreement between these two that would bind them to locate it in a specific location. That would be the alternative, other than just meeting the requirements and setting a southern boundary of that sign zone, and they'd be limited to that specific location.
Okay, so I understand that I believe I'm in favor of getting this approved. You'll get the sign. We just need to determine the location and the height, and that will be something presented to us in the future.
So I think right now, if you go back to the actual sign zone itself, is I think it just, but that's hard to say on this one, but maybe we'd move the line up to just, 5 feet past the front or something, so that we're forcing signs between the building and I-15 and not coming down into the parking lot.
Perfect.
And maybe that would be sufficient. And then we basically from that point south, they wouldn't have any that would spill over into the. Now, it doesn't mean that in the future somebody couldn't build maximize 25 feet, and you might have a couple feet above the roof, but it would basically force them to locate it, and the building would be between them, 12th West or Sand Hill Road.
I think that's a good.
So action step for us, then we would need to just get some more hard numbers on what that actual elevation is and give you guys a new schematic with the size of the sign matching that.
If we approve it, I don't think we do.
No need to. Okay.
So you can continue it. We can review it again. You can bring the stuff back. That's an option. And then we can get more direct information to take to the council.
I'm happy to make a motion based on that 5 feet above the south property boundary, So where's
So 5 feet past the front of that building, is that what you're talking
right, 5 feet north.
Why?
Oh, 5 feet
If
north.
it can be placed further north, why would you not just go visit the site and make the determination?
Well-
5 feet is just somewhat of an arbitrary number.
So what you're saying though is 5 feet behind the building going north, that whole section would be.
Yeah,
turned into
all
sign
we're
zone.
doing is change, we can't tell them where exactly to build the sign or how high or any of that.
We're just
All
saying
we
how
can,
far- how far
all we can
south.
tell is what the zone is, I think.
How
Is that
far
correct?
south the
Correct.
zone is.
So can we work that into our recommendation to city council?
Yeah.
Can we say with positive recommendation with the recommendation that the line be moved to within 5 feet of the building, or
5
Yeah.
feet or-
that's
yeah.
just a
5
quick
feet back to
sketch?
the building, yeah.
Yes, that's.
And then we
that's
can
where I
match
was
our
going
maps to represent your.
Right.
And I think we should move with that.
Let's do
That's
that.
a
Go
great
ahead,
idea.
Madeline, you
Oh,
probably
great. Now I have
better
to say it. Okay, are we ready for this?
Yes.
Says we're good, we're ready. Okay, I make a recommendation that the planning commission forward a positive, wow, that was out of order. I move that we make, the planning commission makes a forward, sorry, let me try this one more time. I can do this, okay.
I second it.
I move that the planning commission forward a positive recommendation to the city council to amend section 14-1-4 sign zones in the sign zone map of the Orem City Code, extending sign zone E to include a portion of the Center Point Church property located at 1550 South Sand Hole Road. And then do I say amend?
To a point.
What's the next
To
verbiage?
the point 5 feet north of the.
5 feet north.
Extending it
South.
down
Okay,
to
so just, yeah.
5 feet north of the southern end of the building.
Extending it down to 5 feet north of the south end of the building.
Yeah, southern face or whatever.
Southern
you wanna
face, yeah. Pick your verbiage.
I second it.
Okay. Tina?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. All right, well, Ryan, you have anything for us?
Nothing this week. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, well,
So can I ask a question? Can we continue, or do you want us to just come back another meeting to talk about the general plan amendment?
I'm okay continuing, but I don't know what everybody else
Yeah,
is.
we need, I'm fine.
We can come back on the 21st. That's fine.
You said you had something to say about the minutes?
Yeah. Well, that's the next item
Yeah.
on the thing is the minutes. I just noticed that Amber was listed as saying aye to our motions when she was not present. So we just need to enter motion for the
And we will make that correction. And you can
Correction,
put that, approve the minutes
Yeah.
with the caveat that they,
Yeah,
that Amber
that's,
be.
and that's what we need to do. So,
Thank you.
That was your idea.
oh, okay. Then I make a motion that we approve no, does anyone have any comments about the meeting minutes?
I second your motion.
No, I have to make it.
Oh, I thought
Then
you
you can
just
say,
did
no,
that.
I didn't. I make a motion that we accept the agenda for,
Approve the minutes.
approve the minutes for August 17th with the caveat that Amber's name gets removed from voting in favor because she was not present.
I second.
Aye.
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 All right,
Aye.
Aye.
make the motion to adjourn.
I
moved to-
second that.
I was gonna say, so moved, or did you make the motion?
I made the motion to adjourn.
Okay. He seconded it.
And I say aye also.
Aye.
Sure.
Aye.
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 Thank you. This has been a tough one. Thank you so much for everybody. I really appreciate all your help with it. We're grateful for it. And this project on 8th North, I don't know what kind of solution we can find out for traffic. Sam, this is if it didn't hit home with one of my neighbors that got smashed right at the intersection, that,
I mean, say UDOT's out of their control, and we say, you know what, but killing people is out of our control. I mean, we're not in the meeting, right? So we don't know.
I know.
You know, having people die of accidents are out of our control too, but we actually can't control. They're not allowed.
That's true. That's true.
Right, I think the next step though, is
Yeah.
we just gotta engage those business owners. Let them know that's the plan.